Everyone says the Buffalo Bills are in salary cap hell. They see Josh Allen's contract, several major extensions, and an expensive roster, and assume the bill must eventually come due. But that conclusion misses how Buffalo actually manages money. The Bills are not avoiding big contracts. They are deciding which players deserve them, when those cap charges should appear, and how to keep their championship window open. This is how Buffalo plans to win now without sacrificing tomorrow. The clearest pattern is Buffalo's willingness to pay young core players before the rest of the league sets their price. Greg Rousseau, Christian Benford, and Khalil Shakir were identified as long-term pieces before reaching unrestricted free agency. Waiting would mean competing against the entire market. By moving early, Buffalo creates cost certainty, keeps important players in the building, and avoids desperate bidding wars. The strategy is simple: identify the core, extend it early, and plan several seasons ahead. But not every extension is an easy decision, and James Cook may be Buffalo's most complicated case. Cook has become one of football's most explosive running backs, but his position creates a difficult financial question. Running backs often decline earlier than quarterbacks, receivers, or pass rushers, making long-term guarantees riskier. Buffalo must decide whether Cook's production justifies a major extension or whether that money would be better spent at positions that generally maintain their value longer. That decision becomes more important when you examine Buffalo's future commitments. Josh Allen's cap charges will grow. Greg Rousseau's extension will become more expensive. Christian Benford and Khalil Shakir will eventually carry larger numbers as their deals progress. Adding another major contract means less room for injuries, free agent additions, and future draft classes. The Bills are not afraid of future cap hits, but every extension must fit the larger plan. One mistake can affect the entire roster. To understand Buffalo's confidence, you must understand how the NFL salary cap works. It is not simply a yearly spending limit. Teams can convert salary into signing bonuses, spread those bonuses across multiple seasons, restructure contracts, and move cap charges into future years. Buffalo has repeatedly used those tools with Josh Allen. The goal is not to make his money disappear. It is to control when the charges arrive so the Bills can continue surrounding their quarterback with talent. Buffalo's model depends on more than contract manipulation. The front office must draft well, develop those players, and retain the best ones before they become too expensive. Rookie contracts provide some of football's strongest value because young contributors can outperform their cap hits. If the Bills consistently find starters through the draft, they can spend heavily on proven stars without creating major weaknesses elsewhere. Draft, develop, retain, and repeat. That cycle is the foundation of sustainable roster construction. Greg Rousseau is one of the clearest examples of Buffalo betting on future value. The Bills signed him to a 4-year, $80 million extension averaging about $20 million annually. That sounds expensive until you compare it with the top of the edge rusher market, where elite players can earn considerably more. Buffalo is betting Rousseau continues developing into a high-impact defender. If that happens, his contract becomes increasingly valuable as the market rises and other pass rushers sign larger deals. Christian Benford represents the same strategy at another premium position. Rather than allowing a young starting cornerback to reach the open market, Buffalo secured him long-term. Cornerback salaries have risen quickly because every team needs defenders who can survive against elite passing attacks. By extending Benford before his value peaked, the Bills avoided a possible bidding war and gained certainty at an important defensive position. The risk is committing significant money before his complete resume has been established. Khalil Shakir's extension shows how Buffalo applies this approach offensively. Shakir developed into one of Josh Allen's most dependable targets, and the Bills acted before another productive season could push his price higher. He is not being paid like an elite receiver, and that is exactly the point. Buffalo secured a trusted, versatile contributor below the top of the wide receiver market. If Shakir keeps improving, his deal could provide strong production without forcing Buffalo to chase expensive receivers in free agency. When you combine the Rousseau, Benford, and Shakir deals, the pattern becomes obvious. Buffalo would rather pay a player 1 year early than 1 year late. Extending early can create savings, continuity, and predictable budgeting. Waiting can produce larger contracts, franchise tag decisions, or the loss of a homegrown starter. The strategy is not guaranteed because early evaluations can be wrong. But when the front office correctly identifies ascending talent, today's expensive contract can become tomorrow's bargain. That brings the conversation back to James Cook. Buffalo must decide whether he belongs in the same long-term group as Rousseau, Benford, and Shakir. Cook's explosiveness makes the offense more dangerous, but paying a running back requires discipline. The Bills cannot judge him only through rushing yards or touchdowns. They must consider durability, receiving value, pass protection, replacement cost, and how his contract affects other positions. This is about deciding which production is truly the hardest to replace. Buffalo is also betting that the NFL salary cap will continue rising. League revenue from television, streaming, sponsorships, and international growth has pushed the cap upward over time. That changes how long-term contracts should be evaluated. A $20 million annual salary may look enormous today but represent a smaller percentage of the cap several years from now. The Bills accept larger future charges because they believe tomorrow's spending limit will be larger, making today's extensions easier to absorb. That is why Buffalo's philosophy can be described as flexibility over flash. The Bills are not trying to win every free agency headline. They are trying to retain the best players, avoid unnecessary bidding wars, and preserve options for future seasons. Some off-seasons may appear less dramatic than others, but sustainable contenders are rarely created through one massive spending spree. They are built through repeated, disciplined decisions that keep the roster competitive without allowing one contract to control the organization. Brandon Beane's plan is built around creating choices. Extend the right players early. Use restructures when the championship window justifies them. Continue drafting affordable contributors. Preserve enough flexibility to respond when injuries or trade opportunities appear. None of those moves guarantees a Super Bowl, but together they prevent Buffalo from becoming trapped by one off-season. The objective is not unlimited cap space. It is enough control to improve the roster every year while Josh Allen remains in his prime. So what grade does Buffalo's front office deserve? I would give the Bills an A. They have committed heavily to a franchise quarterback, retained several important young players, and used contract structure to remain competitive. The grade is not an A+ because the strategy still carries risk. Future cap hits will rise, injuries can change the value of guaranteed money, and one poor extension can create dead money. Still, the overall approach is aggressive, calculated, and appropriate for a championship contender. Buffalo's greatest strengths are clear. The Bills have elite quarterback play, a young core under contract, and a front office willing to act before decisions become emergencies. The risks are also clear. Buffalo must remain healthy, draft well, and avoid overpaying players simply because the team developed them. This plan works only when the evaluations remain accurate. Salary cap management cannot replace talent. It can only help a talented roster remain together longer and create more chances to compete. Among Buffalo's major deals, Greg Rousseau may provide the best long-term value because premium edge rushers become more expensive every offseason. James Cook remains the most important unresolved decision because his talent is obvious, but his position's economics are difficult. Buffalo's next move should follow the same disciplined process: evaluate the player, compare his replacement cost, and act before the market removes flexibility. That method, rather than any single contract, is why the Bills have remained competitive. The final verdict is that Buffalo is not trapped in salary cap hell. The Bills use the cap as a planning tool supporting a championship window built around Josh Allen. They have accepted future obligations, but those obligations are primarily attached to players they believe will remain central to the roster. The approach is aggressive and will not be perfect. Still, Buffalo has given itself a realistic opportunity to contend every season. Next, Front Office Explained will examine the Detroit Lions. That concludes our breakdown of the Buffalo Bills. Their front office has chosen smart extensions, long-term planning, and calculated aggression instead of chasing short-term headlines. The result is a roster designed to compete now while maintaining flexibility for the future. If this video helped you understand NFL contracts and roster decisions, like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Front Office Explained. We are breaking down every NFL front office, one team at a time.